Welcome back, everyone, to Halloween Haunts 365. I'm Jared.
And I'm Terry.
We have a fun interview after we figured out all the technical difficulties coming to you. But first, August 18th, we will be live from Howler's Hatchet House.
Yes.
Some exciting news to come with that. It's us and a couple other guys, but look forward to that. Mark that in your calendars. I'm going to start doing that now. Before we get to this awesome interview, make sure you subscribe, click the button. We got a couple more to do before September 1st.
Yes.
Yep. Look, you're pinning, the mic's working. Oh my god. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring in our interview for tonight. This is gonna be a fun one. Tonight we have Chris from HauntCast, one of the oldest haunt podcasts in the land. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I am doing lovely. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, I've been looking forward to this for a while.
The pleasure is all on this side of the table. Believe me.
So we'll just start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and when did the Halloween bug bite you?
Oh, I am a born and bred Massole. I live on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. I'm wicked smart. I drive a car. Actually, I lost quite a bit of my Boston accent over the years, all the broadcasting I had done back in the day. But yeah, I live on Cape Cod. I'm a smartphone and tablet repair technician. I own my own shop.
Oh, that's awesome.
A little fun fact for y'all. Been, let's see. Oh man, I've been doing like haunting and the home haunts since 1979.
Jesus.
The Wayback Machine. We're going way back.
I thought I had experience going through in like 87, 89, but you got me beat.
No, 79 was my first venture into it with a buddy of mine. The Bonfiglios were a family who lived right next door to me. And the mother, Mary Ellen, was just super crafty. And she taught me how to make paper mache masks. Because, we're going back to Ben Cooper, Collegeville costumes. And that was it. Either you made your own costume or you bought one of those cheap Ben. We love them, but they were garbage.
We love them now. They were garbage then.
We love them, but they were crap, and they were all we had, and they were like probably $2.99 at the local CVS or a drugstore down the street. Yeah. So anyway, she used to throw a speaker in the window and play the 1964 chilling, thrilling sounds of the haunted house out the window. And she had a couple of other ones like the Monsters Speak, and there was a few other records that she would throw on like Halloween, and she would play them out the window, and she would get dressed up as a witch. She made her own, like, because this was pre-Spirit Halloween and all that kind of stuff. So you couldn't even just get a plastic cauldron back at that time. So she made her own paper mache cauldron. She'd fill it with candy. She'd get all done up like a witch, and she'd like cackle and fling open the door and get a good startle out of the kids and give them candy. One year we decided, me and her son, to make a coffin out of like a refrigerator box, and we put it on the porch. And I laid in, I was dressed as Dracula, and I laid in, I was basically just like a decoy. And when they come up the stairs and they would see me, he would come like running from behind in a werewolf mask and come running up behind him and scare the shit out of him. And then we got to pop up and we get like a nice little combo scare out of him. And that was like after that. And that was I was about 12 when, 11 or 12 when that happened. So that was at the age then where kids, you weren't trick-or-treating after then, or the older kids would wedgie you or egg the shit out of you. So it was one of those things where you kind of, right when you hit about 12 or so, you ended up going out with other kids, and you'd either get into egg wars. But I wasn't into any of that. Like, I didn't care about that. I just loved Halloween. And so once I moved from there, like 5 streets over, we had our own house, because I was only living in an apartment then. And then we had our own house, and I had a nice big yard with all pine trees around it. So it was kind of a spooky house. I had it on my paper route, and it used to scare the shit out of me. And so then that was my house now. So I got to, I made a couple of tombstones, and me and my brother and a friend laid out in the yard. and pretended like we were dead in the yard. Like I had the Fang face mask, which I bought that year, which was kind of a big deal because the masks were expensive. Like I don't remember how much I paid for it back in the day, but if I factored it out, it was probably over $100, you know, in like today's money, which I grew up poor. So that was like, I took all my paper money to buy that mask. So anyway, so that was the beginning of me. And then my brother and my other buddy, Chris, they both bailed on, because they were already like a year or two older than me. So they both bailed, and they were like, you know, they were getting into girls at that time. And I was still the kid playing with Star Wars figures, and I loved Halloween. So I started doing stuff in my yard. I made, I remember, I think I made the first thing I made was, I took some like they were 2x4s, some ladder parts. And I went to the hardware store and bought some hinges and stuff. And I made an actual functioning guillotine that the wood would drop down, and I made it with like a styrofoam head and threw a dummy body behind it, and it would knock the head out into a basket. And then this is a kid. I had I didn't have any good tools. My father wasn't a handy guy. He never really had he didn't have a workshop or anything. I just kind of pieced together a bunch of crap, and I made an actual thing that worked. And then I made a coffin, and each year I made a couple of things, and I loved it. I would decorate. I would put stuff up in my yard. I was doing foam tombstones back then too. So, but I was like, I doubt I was not an originator of the foam tombstone, but like we had a couple of sheets of foam of like that white styrofoam in the shed left over from when my father insulated the house. And I was just in there looking at it, and I go, I could probably make some tombstones out of that. And I just cut out a bunch of triangle tombstones. I think one had like a curved top to it, but I didn't realize that you had to latex paint them. So I was using spray paint and realized real quick how fast the acetone from the spray paint will completely dissolve. And in some cases it adds some texture to it. So it can make it kind of cool, like distresses it a bit. But I would like stand, you know, usually you spray about 6 inches away. I was like 12 inches away, kind of spraying it just to get a mist, so it would give it some color. I never even thought to just get some house paint and slap it on there. It just wasn't in my mindset. And I made a couple of wooden tombstones too that I just could spray paint. And so I had a really, I had a real basic, it was shit, but because you couldn't buy store-bought stuff back then. You couldn't go to Home Depot. I don't even think Home Depot was around at that point. It was only Ace Hardware and True Value. So, I don't think True Home Depot came in for many years after, until like the 90s around my area in Massachusetts. So, I just ended up just cobbling together shit and kind of figured things out. And there were some years I didn't do it every year, because I did get into girls, and then I was like, oh, I can't let people know I'm doing this. It's kind of geeky. And I stopped for a couple of years, but I always would drift back and be like, even when I moved out of my mother's house, I'd come back because I left everything there, all the stuff that I had made. So a couple of times I'd contact her when I was even moved out of the house, and I'd say, hey, could I come back and do Halloween there? Because it wasn't a haunt. It was just like, could I come back and decorate for Halloween? Could I go do the yard for Halloween? She'd be like, yeah, I guess so, as long as you put everything away once you're done. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I'd come over and spend the whole day. I would never nothing was ever set up a day before, a week before. It was all set up the day of. I would come in and just spend hours trying to set everything up. Like, I didn't even know how to mount tombstones. Like, that was another thing. I had no clue how to do it. I would just bang like a wooden stake, like a piece of wood into the ground, and lay the tombstone next to, like, up against it, and then put a bunch of dirt piled down the bottom to kind of keep it in place as best I could. And that was me, like, figuring out how to mount a tombstone. And of course, any wind going the opposite direction would just knock them all over. But I would luck out a lot, and I didn't have much problems with like the wind on Halloween. But all that stuff was like I say. So my love of Halloween and haunting, Halloween goes back to as long as I can remember. I grew up with a lot of we had the Creature double feature around here. That was a big thing in Boston. It was the creature. Everybody had their own like show, but we had ours was on. It wasn't a night show. It was Saturday afternoon from 2 to 4 or something like that. So after the bowling, like Candlepins for Cash, the bowling thing was over. The local station, the channel 56, would then jam in two back-to-back horror movies. Or they went from originally, I think there were the Shock Theater ones where it was all the Universal and the B movies, and eventually that just transformed into all Toho, and it was like all Toho all the time. So it was like, Ghidorah, all the Godzillas, Ghidorah, Mothra, whatever else, Mecha Godzilla. So like I was already like deep into all the Halloween stuff and like horror stuff when I was a kid, and the famous Monsters of Film Land magazines and all that. And then that just took the next step to me, like when my buddy asked me to decorate the porch and be Dracula. And then once I did that one year, I was like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing ever. And then it was like the first hit of heroin, you know what I'm saying? Once you get that hit, you're just chasing the dragon for the next 50 years. I'm still chasing the dragon, man.
Yeah.
And I can't catch it. It's trying to get those butterflies like you did those first year or so. It's tough to get those back, but we keep trying.
Yeah.
Keep trying, and then that brings me up to where I am now. But which is where I'm not really too sure. A haunt podcaster and a yard haunt fanatic, I guess.
There you go. So, what inspired you to start HauntCast, and how did you come up with the concept for the show? Because you did this way before the podcast boom of 2020.
Dude, I was a haunt OG host.
Yeah, you were.
I had somebody had made a comment on one of my recent. I think it was because the podcast is linked to YouTube. So if I post it, the audio version will pop up on YouTube, and you can click and play it through YouTube. And someone posted something about like, man, you were freaking an OG, like a haunt OG, or like you've been at this a long time. Well, I think I don't remember how far the YouTube channel. I wasn't doing YouTube. Like my YouTube channel was only to post a couple of haunt videos. That was really all I was doing. Maybe I would do a tutorial here and there. A lot of them weren't even tutorials. They were just like, hey, I just built a little mausoleum. Check it out. And I might have described how I did it, but I didn't show anything. I just showed like, here's the finished product, and this is kind of what I did. And then people would bitch at me that I didn't tell them anything. I didn't give them any real information. And I'm like, oh, am I supposed to do that? I don't know. I'm new to YouTube. I don't know how to I'm not sure how this stuff is supposed to work. I'm not sure that I still know how it's supposed to work.
Me neither, brother. So it's fine.
I know. So anyway, yeah. So it was one of those things where, I guess what happened was I had a break from doing any kind of yard haunt. For a while there, I was just doing Halloween parties. I would just do full-blown Halloween parties, and I would decorate the whole house up, and I would do full dress. A lot of people show up weren't even in costume, which always pissed me off, but whatever. We would do these big parties, and I finally got to a point where I decided, I moved. I was back in Boston, like I had bought my mother's house back where I lived and did that haunt those first number of years in the 80s. And then I ended up buying her house, but I never wanted to move back there. But it just, by default, the deal was too good and I couldn't pass it up. We're there for a couple of years, and then I moved down the Cape, and then got my own place. Immediately got into a divorce. By the way, you can't change your relationship by changing your zip code. Just make a note of that, kids. That doesn't work. And so moved down here, and then I got divorced, and then I got my own place. And then once I got my own place, I just like the first thing that came into my head is I got to start doing something for Halloween. Now that year I had my kids on Halloween because we were rotating every other year. So the next year, I moved in here on 2006, 2007. I'm thinking that's when I'm going to start. I'm going to start doing a display, I think is what I called it. My haunting still wasn't even my vocabulary. So I think that's when I said, that's what I'm going to do. Next year, I'm going to start decorating. And I remembered that I found the monster list and I think I found Halloween Forum online at that point. So I was already seeing like building armatures with PVC and building tombstones and like pneumatic props and stuff. So I was like, all right, I'm going to take a crack at this and see what I can do. And I remember the first thing I wanted to do was build a trash can trauma. Like I saw a trash can trauma, lost my shit. I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And then I remember hitting somebody up and asking them if they would just, because they made a really good one. I said, hey, do you build these? And he's like, no, I just do them on my own. He was not even doing a tutorial. He just showed a video of his trash can trauma in action, like a scare cam type of deal. I was thinking, this is phenomenal. I got to figure out how to build this thing. And yeah, I did everything that I would recommend someone absolutely not to do at this point, where I build it with a bike pump, like a solenoid out of a dishwasher or out of like a washing machine. Like I did everything that people were teaching back in those days, which would basically, you were building like explosives, like like fragment grenades, which you could definitely kill people. And luckily, I'll tell you, even though I bought some real pneumatic, I want after that, that was like I built that thing, and then everything else beyond that was all, I was buying stuff off of like eBay or Fright Props or Monster Guts at that time. And I was buying solenoids. I was learning how to do it the right way, buying proper prop controllers with a proper solenoid and all this other stuff. So it was like that progression. I went from doing that, but I'll tell you, the action off that first trash can trauma with the bike pump was absolutely amazing. It was just a Rubbermaid trash can with a Huffy bike pump in it, or a Husky. Yeah, Home Depot. It was a Husky bike pump with like a styrofoam head and a mask on it. And I had like bungee cords to hold it down so it wouldn't like shoot right through the through the top of the thing. The bungee cords like stopped it, and it stopped it and pulled it back down again. So that was the way it retracted, because it was only like a one-way piston. It wasn't like a dual action. Right. It was like a one action. So but I figured all that out once again, just figured it out on my own, just by doing some shit. Like, I think I remember doing something like this way back. And anyway, but that trash can trauma, I ended up donating. I gave it to somebody. Best trash can trauma ever. And I went out and bought like a DC props mechanism that it's like a heavy lifter and all this. And then I got like a big 55-gallon drum and did it all up. And it looks awesome and it looks great and it will last forever. And you could basically, you could throw grenades at it and the thing wouldn't, the thing's just insane. But it just still didn't have that same action, that same scare, that startle that I got out of that first one. But yeah, so anyway, so from starting that first year, I think I started screwing around on Halloween Forum a lot, and then I joined Haunt Forum. From those two, I decided that from building props, I started. I think I was screwing around. I had a Mac. I had a Mac, and I was new to a Mac, and it had GarageBand. And I'm like, oh, I used to do audio editing back in the day, and I learned some digital audio editing. It was one of the first studios. I was working at the station up in Boston, and it was one of the first stations that had like digital editing in it. You know what I mean? So I learned way back how to edit stuff. So I was like making some commercials and promos, because I worked in radio for a little bit, not long. I realized what a sham radio is. It's like really, it's such a joke. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's most radio. It's just total bullshit, So anyway, I forget. Well, so I started screwing around. I was trying to do some voiceover stuff. I was like making some scary voices. I did that for a Scully voice. If you've ever, listened to the show, the Scully. And I started doing, so I offered up, and I was doing some free voiceovers for people on Halloween Forum that year. And the next year I got the idea, hey, maybe I could do something where I could make a couple of dollars and like actually do some work. People seem to love it. Maybe I can make a few bucks next season. And I wanted to start a website. And then I started looking into podcasts. I don't know how I stumbled into podcasts, which was a very new thing. And somebody was saying, if you want to market your business, you should start a podcast. And I was like, I don't know what a podcast is, but I'll look into it. Oh, okay, great. It's just a radio show on MP3. It's like it's a radio show on an MP3 format. Okay. I know I have all my production skills. I dug through, found a whole bunch of, you know what a DAT is? digital audio tape.
Yeah.
It's old school, dude. It was back in the 90s. It was a big thing for a couple of years, mainly only for like studio work, because people would master down instead of using a big reel to reel where you'd record stuff onto the reel to reel and save it. Everybody was starting to mix it down onto digital audio tape, which is, it looked like a cassette. It was like a small little kind of cassette, but it was digital. And so I had all these DATs with all these sound effects libraries that I ripped off from the radio stations, or borrowed from the radio stations. So I had like this massive library. So I started putting things together, and then I created a little intro, and I put it up on Haunt, because I was posting like heavily between Haunt Forum and Halloween Forum at the time. This is 2008. And I posted a little intro for what became known as HauntCast. And that was, I think I put out like a call, like almost not a casting call, but I think I threw something out like, hey, would anybody be interested in a haunt podcast? And a whole bunch of people just chimed in, because there was no content at that time. 2008, you're not finding any haunt content out there. Rotting Flesh Radio, do you remember that?
Yeah.
Rotting Flesh Radio. They were around. Like, I didn't know who they were. I wasn't aware of them until I mentioned something, and then someone said, hey, you should check out Rotting Flesh Radio, just so you're not doing the same thing that they're doing, kind of a thing. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I listened and checked it out and go, okay, yeah, I have better ideas for what I'm thinking about doing. But everything was just kind of flying by the seat of our pants. Revenant hit me up and he goes, hey, if you're interested in doing this, I've been thinking about this for a year or so. I'd be interested in getting into doing something with you, but we need to talk. Like, he needed to vet me out to find out whether I was serious enough about doing this. Like, he just didn't want to waste his time. And I totally understand that. So he reached out, said, hey man, let's get on the phone. We talked. And he's like, Chris, do you understand how much work this is going to be? This is a lot of work for what you're looking to do. And we talked, kind of hashed out some ideas of what we could do. And I go, yeah, maybe we could like throw in some music, do a segment here and there, kind of figure out like an hour format. And then, and we'll have like a little intro, and then I'll do a little host thing. And then maybe we'll do like haunt news. And that was Revenant's job. He was going to do the haunt news. And I said, he had an idea. He goes, I want to do this thing I have in mind called Theater of the Mind. I go, I don't know what it is, but if you do the news and you do that and you make it 8 to 10 minutes and it doesn't suck, you could do that, or anything else you want to do. I don't care. Needless to say, it turned out to be the most popular segment out of the entire show. And so he vetted me out. We talked. He tried to talk me out of it. I wouldn't have it. I was already too far into it. Like, no, we're going to do this. I don't know how we're doing it. We need to fill it up with content. And I don't know what content to come up with. John, I had seen, so Revenant was heavily on Haunt Forum. I was on Haunt Forum and Halloween Forum. I went over to Halloween Forum and said, I need to find somebody from Halloween Forum to get involved so it'd be easier to promote on Halloween Forum, because they'll know this guy. So I found Johnny Thunder, and he was in like the horror segment. So I said, we could do a horror segment, right? Because it's always constant stuff coming. There's always new shows and movies. That's an easy segment filler right there. So I reached out to him. He did the same thing. He goes, call me. We talked on the phone. And he's like, look, he's like, because he loves, he was a big like Stern fan and talk radio fan and all that kind of stuff. He goes, I'd be down for it as long as we do a banter back and forth, like a Robin and Howard type of thing. He's like, I'm not interested in, I'm not going to sit down and record something. I don't know how to edit. I don't want to learn software. He goes, but I'll get on the phone. I'll get on the phone or Skype with you and we'll chat. And then you do you do the editing and stuff. And he's like, and I'll talk about the comment. I'll do reviews on some movies and stuff. Like, done. Needless to say, those two people have been with me for 15 years or so. Like, that was just, like throwing it out there. We connected. I've been very lucky with the people that I found on the show. Very rarely, like, have I had a problem where I've brought somebody in and they didn't work. They flaked out on me and drove, there were people over the years, yes, but in general, most of the people who have either contacted me or like we've connected online and they've submitted something, it's been pretty good or workable. And we were like, I was able to work with them, give them a little coaching by just like saying, hey, tighten this up, do this, do that. I don't give a lot of direction, but if I hear something I don't like, I'll say, maybe we shouldn't do that, but yeah, so that was kind of how the show kind of started out, was from me trying to do a voiceover business. Was not capable. I'm no Dick Terhune. Are you kidding me? But at the time, I thought maybe there was something to it, and I could do a couple of voices, and maybe I could and I was great at production. Maybe I could make something work, and then that let me into the podcast. Then the podcast led me in. The longer I've been, as we've been doing the podcast, I'm talking to haunters, and as I'm talking to haunters, I'm learning more. And as I'm learning more, I'm getting more into the haunting and more into building and learning more, and been able to create a much better haunt due to all of my exposure, due to my podcast, because I was like inundated and surrounded by it, so, it kind of helped me up my game. You can't help not when you're talking to these like amazing freaking haunters or artists and stuff who are kind of just giving you their secrets, they're just like, so how do you, unless you just shut them down and don't want to learn, but if you're open to, to try some new things,
When you bring out the notepad and like, what was that part for the fans,
yeah.
So what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in the beginning? Because I can't imagine there was a lot of tech support for podcasting, and you guys are in different parts of the country. So what are some of the early challenges before what we have today?
Recording on Skype, as we just found out a few minutes ago. I was recording on Skype. I had to learn. I'm like, how do I record? How do I record with somebody over the phone? How does this work? Then I realized pretty quickly, you can't use the microphone built into your computer as your audio source, as your microphone. So over the course I think it took me about 7 or 8 months in before I actually invested in a decent mic. And at that time, I was freaking broke too. When the first couple of years of HauntCast, which is why the show stopped the first time around after 3 years, it was because I was absolutely almost destitute. I was almost going to lose my house. Lots of problems monetarily, like just a lot of shit was going on in my life. It was as far as I loved, I was doing so much work in HauntCast and trying to move the podcast forward. But anyway, so microphone was a big thing. I had to figure out how to record, which, I figured out, I can use Skype. And then I found some little software that was, I think they only do make it from Macs. I'm not sure. It was called Audio Hijack, and it's a great friggin' app. And I used that to record with. Revenant recorded. He had a decent mic. He recorded with his own. Johnny was doing a headset mic, I think, at the time. And eventually I bought a much better mic and then shipped him that one. And he took my better, that Shure mic, and I bought the Audio Technica one for me. I mean, a lot of it was just like, getting interviews actually wasn't even a problem. Like getting people to like talk to wasn't a problem, because once again, most people like a podcast, I don't even know what you're talking about. Yeah, I'll chat with you for like a half hour. That was like most people's like, didn't realize what it even was, and probably hadn't never heard of a podcast, or even had heard of one at that point. So sometimes I would reach out to people and they didn't even get, like, I don't know what you're talking about. So that was a challenge. A podcast, I guess, but it was amazing. I didn't have that many problems getting people on. Occasionally I got turned down from people. It's just it's the fact of life. The production I had, the sound effects I gathered, and I had some, and I gathered, and so the production wasn't a problem for me. Getting the talent didn't seem to be much of a problem for me either, because we just kind of started to accrue good people, and most of them were pretty reliable as far as turning segments in. there wasn't a lot of challenges. My biggest challenges were my monetary challenges, which caused me to be at a point where I thought, okay, this is also prior to crowdfunding. Forget about Patreon, Subscribe, Scar, or any of the other crowdfunding, monetization. Nothing was happening. I don't think Google at that point hadn't even bought YouTube. I think YouTube was, I don't remember what it was. So around 2012, I think that was one. I came back one season and I tried to charge. And once again, this is a massive mistake I made because I didn't realize, like, we had at one point for Halloween, just before I did this, we had like 30,000 downloads, okay, of the show. I was pretty impressed by the numbers that we were doing. We were doing consistently like 10 to 15 every show we dropped. And then when we got into the season, they would go up to 20, 30,000 or so per episode. So the numbers were pretty good. I thought, well, if we just charged $1, I mean, who doesn't, like, people buy songs all day long for $1 off of YouTube, off of iTunes. So if we just charged $1 for the episode for like a 3-hour show, people probably shouldn't have a problem with that. That should go over really well. Wrong. Wrong. You go to giving something for free and then going to charge people for it with no intermediary. That wasn't like, hey, we're going to give you like 30 minutes of it for free. And then if you want to become a premium, once again, this was all before any of that. So I had no frame of reference on how to work this. We tried to charge $1 per episode, and that lasted for about 5 months or so. And then I realized, all right, forget this. We'll just go back, because you can't make money advertising. You cannot make money trying to advertise and sell sponsorships or advertising on your show. You'll make a couple of bucks here and there, but you cannot sustain any type of monetary income or something that's doable if you're seriously, like, as a part-time job. It's not going to work trying to sell advertising. Most people I try to sell advertisements to anyway. Speak much English, mother? Do you speak it? Trying to sell advertising to like vendors, they were like, I don't even know what a podcast is. You get a lot of that. Why? I don't even know. Who are you? I haven't even heard of you. Or if they had, they just didn't see the value in it. Like, they didn't see the captive audience and why it could be beneficial to them. And I was like, all right, I get it. So we ended up strapping that. We tried the $1 thing. That didn't work. We went up back to advertising. But at that point, things got really bad for me and my like, I was back in school. I had 3 kids. I thought I was going to lose. I thought I was barely able to make my mortgage. I had a DJ. I was DJing weddings at that point in my life because I was a transitional thing. And the money that I was making, I was like basically just keeping my head above water because it's on Cape Cod. It's very seasonal as well. People come down. They'll go have weddings down here from about April through October into November, and that's it. They're not coming down here in the winter to have weddings. So then at that point, I realized I gotta go get a part-time job. I was in school too. I was in JUCO. I was in junior college trying to get my IT degree there. So it was just a lot. It was a shitstorm of stuff going on. And then, like to say, that monetization thing didn't work out. I didn't know what to do. So we canceled the show. And then I tried to move on. And then like 5 or 6 months later, Tara, Scary Lady Videos. I don't know if you know who she is. Tara from the cul-de-sac.
I think so.
Scary Lady Videos on YouTube. She used to do a lot of tutorials earlier on back in the day. She started this whole campaign to resurrect HauntCast, to bring it back. And she's like, we'll get people to pay $100. Hardcore fans will pay $100. And if we can get, I forget, she said 250 people to do it, will you bring the show back? And I said, you're out of your effing mind. I couldn't get people to give me $1 per episode. Well, actually, I did. I got like 100 people who would do the $1 per episode. But I was like, she decided to do it. I wasn't behind it at first. And then all of a sudden I started gaining momentum. And then I was like, holy shit, this could actually work. And then I got behind it and it did work. But unfortunately, from that point on, for the next couple of years, it was subscription only. And by subscription only, we had, 250 people who were willing to buy in, but we lost all of the rest of the audience because we were monetized. And once again, at that point, there was no such thing as monetization for this stuff. There was no advertise. You couldn't make money advertising. There was no YouTube model to do it with. There was no crowdfunding model for me to emulate, to use. And I just had no direct. So I bought, all of that was completely botched. And if I went back into time, I would have said, oh yeah, now I know how it would work. We would do some free content, some paid content. We'd be able to give people premium memberships, and that probably would have worked out great. I just didn't go about it the right way because I didn't know. And I was freaking out because I thought I was going to lose my house. So it was tough. So anyway, all that behind me, the show did progress. We did it for a couple of years, subscription only. And then I quit again because I wasn't happy that we weren't growing. And I was like, I want an audience. I don't want to keep doing what we're doing, but I don't know what else to do. So I just gave up. And then about another 6 months later or more, a year later, I was like, I want to do it again. And we started doing it for free. We were just doing it like every quarterly, like every 3 or 4 months. And then we brought it back to every other month. And then I quit again for like 4 years. So I'm surprised anybody has stuck with our show for as long as they have, because I'm bipolar. Well, I also had a lot of drinking issues at that point too. I've straightened that out. Edibles only now. I'm an edibles only guy now. But yeah, I was like all over the place. It was like, as Johnny Thunder would say, you're either balls deep or you're effing out. He's like, you're either all in or you're all out. And he's like, I can never tell. You're one minute you're this. Now I'm much more balanced. I thought I would bring it back again, but I did try to do your YouTube thing. I was trying to do the YouTube channel last year, and I was trying to do content. I realized, man, to be a content creator on YouTube, I have gained so much respect for content creators now from just dipping my toe into it, figuring out, holy shit, like I had to figure out how to hook up a DSLR camera, how to connect it, how to shoot video better, how to set up a little home studio at the house, I needed to start getting assets, so which I had to join I think I joined like Envato Elements to gain assets so I could get B-roll and in memes and just collecting things. And it's a never-ending process. And then after doing it, and I was like, all right, maybe I'll just start doing how-to videos. And there's a bunch of people out there and doing a lot better than I could. And I just realized how much of a grind it was. And as I'm putting videos out and I'm getting like 200-300 views on a video, I'm thinking, if I'm going to do all this work and I'm only going to get like 300 views on a video, I might as well go back to audio only and do a podcast again, because there's no point to doing this. And that's exactly what I did. I just looked at it and go, I'd be so much better off if I just went back to doing an audio HauntCast again. But I can't go back to doing it the way I was doing it before. I can't go back to doing this behemoth 3-hour MP3 show with music plus copyright issues. Even if I don't know if you have even if Eric Gavin, they go, hey, yeah, for Midnight Syndicate, and say, hey, yeah, you can use our music, and it doesn't matter. YouTube will flag it and copyright you.
Yep.
Now, usually they don't give you a copyright flag. They just say, hey, it can be restricted, but like Midnight Syndicate can get monetization for it. Yeah. Like they can play ads and they'll get the money, which is fine by me. I don't care. I'm not looking to make money off of an ad off of like my home haunt video or something, but copyright music's an issue, and I didn't want to do the big behemoth thing again. And I thought, well, because I've been thinking about this for years, how I could have done, like, what could I have done differently, over the years, and releasing one segment every week instead of doing, 10 segments every month, or every other month. I factored it out and go, I would be doing less work. I would have less headache. I'd have to do less production, less editing. right now I've got like 2 months worth of material in the can right now that I don't even have to start editing yet, because it's like some of the stuff is like months out, because this is so much easier to do one individual segment every Friday. So I just, after giving this a thought, trying to figure it out, I decided, all right, I'm going to do this. I got to contact Johnny to see if he's in. Johnny's always down. He just goes like, look, if you, he's like, you told me you weren't going to do this anymore. I'm not going to hold you to that. If you ever ask me to come back, just let me know. I'll be good to go. And I did, and he was. And then I had to bring it up to Revenant. He was like, really? Okay. Yeah, I guess I could put something together. His segment's a lot more researched, and he does has to do a lot more writing and scripting to his. So his takes a little bit more work. But I'm like, yeah, I can start banging out interviews, talking to haunters, prop makers, whatever, vendors, and start lining up some. I go right there. I could just, I could get a couple of those a month. If I can get a couple other fillers, and somebody else popped in, wanted to do the prop shop. Another person popped in and wanted to do a different version of the Terror Tech. So we've got Dexter Morgan doing Terror Tech. We've got Lou Gorman from Graverot Studios doing the prop shop now. So I've got a couple of new members. We got Johnny, we've got Revenant, and like I say, I'm open to somebody else if they have a good idea for a segment or want to fill one of our old segments that wants to come in. Ed Gannon's going to come back and do the Something Wicked, which is more of the pro haunt geared segment. It's so much easier. I'm like, I should have been doing this years ago. If I had done this years ago, I probably would have never taken time off, because it's just so much easier. And I'm loving it now. Like, once I started doing this, it's ridiculous how much this show, how much HauntCast has become a part of who I am, that I thought I could walk away from it and just be done with it. And then years later, I'm like, it just keeps dragging me by the throat back in. And once I realized we were bringing the show back, the amount of joy that was in my body, like I can't explain how excited I was about the fact that we were bringing it back. And I go, it's going to be a slugfest to bring the audience back, to rebuild the audience. Plus, a lot of people come and go. You know what I realized? I was talking to Jim Slanker when I was at the Midwest Haunters Convention, and Jim was telling me, he's like, we were talking about the audience, and I go, yeah, I'm going to have to really work, because he's been a fan forever. And he's like, dude, I'm so glad you're back. I'm so excited about this. And I said, yeah, I just got to try to rebuild the audience now. It's just going to take a little time to kind of try to rebuild things. He goes, Chris, one thing I know about home haunters, he goes, they turn over every 6 years. He's like, I see people come and go into our group. He goes, we have like 1,000 people or something that are members of our group. He goes, on a given week, like if we do a make and take, or we get together, maybe 50 people will actually show up. A lot of people you never hear from again after a few years. They get really into it, and they just kind of, they get so into it, and then they just burn out after 5 or 6 years, and they just completely kind of give up, and they just don't do it anymore. So I go, yeah, so actually most people who were probably listening to the show when I started out aren't even doing this, aren't even into this anymore. So fine, we're just going after almost an entire new audience, and hopefully we have something to offer people that they really dig, and hopefully we'll be able to rebuild our audience back again. It's happening. It's slow, but it's also hard to promote. You can only so much you can do on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook.
Oh yeah.
There's only so much you can do there, so it's just, yeah, it's work, but I'm having fun, and it's no stress to me now. And it's so much more enjoyable. And now that I'm back into doing it again, talking to people like you, a whole bunch of other haunters, prop builders, I'm so energized, and I'm going huge on my home haunt this year. The last couple of years, I added a few things here and there. And this year I'm going like huge this year. I'm building a Cthulhu right now. So it might take me 2 months to complete. We'll see,
I've been following on the Instagram.
Oh, it's coming. It looks like shit right now. It's really hard to get the concept of what you're going for when you're just seeing a PVC armature or you're just starting to add some foam to the legs. It's like you take a picture of it and you're like, it's like looks ridiculous, and then it's going to take a while. Once the body is fully shaped out and it starts to really take shape, then I think it will really kind of come into view. But because I'm even looking at pictures, like I'm just posting another picture of my group, and I'm like, yeah, this doesn't look like much, man, but it's gonna get there. We'll get there, we'll get there.
So what are some of your favorite episodes or moments from the podcast so far? I mean, you only have 40 years of it.
Jeez. I've had some great interviews. I'm trying to think of what, like, some of my most memorable. I don't know. Like, I mean, there are things that I've taken from the show that have been really important from me. Most of them have been from Revenant segments. So not so much from people even. So there are plenty of haunters that I've definitely gotten quite a bit of knowledge from. Just like Revenant's Theater of the Mind segment, I learned how important a backstory was to your haunt, creating a backstory, why it's important, how you can build on it, instead of just throwing out a whole bunch of random different things. Everything has to make sense. You're creating this world. Everything has to make sense within this world. My clowns do not fit into the world of the Village Meyer Yard Haunt. The Village Meyer Yard Haunt is a boggy, creepy, eerie, place. It's not right. There's something wrong with it, my original backstory from my haunt, which I guess I might be getting off topic here, but the original backstory for the Village Meyer was a mad genetic engineer that was splicing human DNA with plants, animals, and insects to create these abominations that come out on Halloween to feed. They feed on trick-or-treaters on Halloween, and everything had to be like an insect or a plant. Like I have a mantis creature, I have a cornstalker creature, I have a vine creature, and maggots, and a well, and all this other, and I have a cemetery portion of it, which is like straight kind of gothic section, and everything else is based on that kind of theme. And then I've been now switching into, because this is another thing from Revenant segments, from going back and editing all of these old segments out of those big shows and putting them up individually on all the podcast platforms. I started going back and re-listening to some, and I realized that he had talked about, he did a whole segment on Lovecraft haunt. How would you do a Lovecraft haunt? How a person could make that work? You don't see any of them out there. And I'm a big on trying to do something that nobody else is doing. Like you can't see it anywhere else. You're not finding it anywhere else. That's why I'm like a huge fan of Bob Cole's Attic Hatch, the Infestation Yard Haunt, because it's just got these massive freaking creatures and all. It's like a biohazard chemical type thing. We have a lot of similarities kind of in our takes of how we do our haunts in some respects, but where he goes huge, massive, and big and over the top, mine's more just like subtle and eerie and creepy type things. And now I'm leaning heavy into Lovecraft, doing an Innsmouth scene, Cthulhu. I've got the two fishermen, like the Innsmouth fisherman creatures. And and so I'm going to have like a section of my haunt that's going to be just all of that Lovecraft. The other section of the haunt still going to be the same. It's that kind of boggy mire, and then in the middle it's all the gothic cemetery that sits in the middle between those kind of two different sections, but it's all within that concept. And once again, that's something that I picked up from a segment that he did about Lovecraft, about theming and how to do a backstory for your haunt, and making everything fit within that, which was a big game changer, because I started off just trying to throw skeletons here and this and that, and like a groundbreaker. And after a couple of years, I tried to coalesce into a name, a theme, and then go in that direction, and everything kind of went in that direction. What was the original question? Things that I Oh, things that I learned from the pod.
Some of your
You know,
favorite episodes or moments, just stuff that
you know,
you remember.
I had so many great interviews. It's really hard to even go back. I had a blast. You know, some of our, you know, I don't. I'd say some of the best things with working within the podcast, going to Transworld for the first time was amazing. We had our 1 year where we got everybody from that was on the show at that point. It was the Mistress of Mayhem, Shelley, Denny, who did the prop shop, Rev, JT, me. All of us were there, and we had a booth at HauntCast, and we all, you know, so that getting everybody there all together at that trade show was a pretty amazing experience. All hanging out for the first time all together. You know, you're talking to these people on all opposite ends of the country all the time, you know, and then finally getting together and actually meeting everybody and chatting and talking was a pretty great experience. And like I say, some and other, I mean, I don't know necessarily just experiences as far as interviews and stuff, you know, running into people who come up to you and or who hit you up online and say, oh my God, from your show has helped me take my game to the next level. I've had is Brent, I forget his last name. He runs a pro haunt. It's Planet Doom. I hope I'm not getting his name wrong. It was Planet Doom, which is now the Doom Haunt, which is out in Idaho. And he kind of did his haunt as a home haunt, which then went pro. I remember him hitting him up and going, man, your show was invaluable to help me like really, you know, get my game together, really take my haunt and level it up. And now I'm like doing a pro haunt. And it was all because of all these things that I learned from all of the different people you talk to and all the different segments that you guys have done over the years. It was invaluable to helping me, you know, elevate my game into where I am now. And that was pretty impressive. Like that was one of those moments where it's like, great, we are having an effect. We are doing something, you know, positive, besides being a bunch of drunken Neanderthals and rambling about nonsense on the internet. That some people are actually having you know, who gaining from it and actually helping them to have a better, you know, better experience haunting or whatever. And some people just like the fact that they know that they're not the only sick son of a bitches out there in the world who are into this stuff, that there are other freaks out there like me, like us, who share in this passion and are willing to just, you know, talk about it, you know, and aren't afraid, you know, to just say, hey, yeah, I'm a freak. I'm into this shit. I love this stuff. I don't care, you know, and come to terms with that. You know?
No, I hear you. Yeah, there's more out there than you think. That's what pretty much East Coast Hunters Convention showed me, was there were so many normal people there that I was shocked. So yeah, it just shows me that the love for Halloween's still there, and I'm gonna keep producing videos to show off these haunts.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, the sad thing about it over the years, I think what, you know, as I say, I don't know what trick-or-treating is like, you know, in a lot of places around the country, but I'm sure it's not as pronounced as it was back in the day, you know, when I was growing up in the 70s, 80s. So these haunts that, like, you know, it's where I'm speaking as a home haunter, but pro haunters as well. These are ways for people to celebrate Halloween. If they're, unfortunately, if people aren't trick-or-treating in their town, by having that home haunt as a hub and attracting people and getting them out of their house and getting them out, maybe they will knock on your neighbor's doors and ask for candy or whatever, but by getting them out, this is the way that they can celebrate Halloween if their towns are freaking lame and are cracking down. I mean, it's not like people are out causing damage like they used to, you know. Right. People aren't out. Nobody's out throwing eggs. You don't get people. I mean, maybe there are, but very few. It's not like it used to be. People aren't flipping cars over. They're not, you know, whipped creaming or shaving creaming people's cars and doing all this other shit like people used to do. people don't give out candy. They don't get tricked anymore. You know, if you don't give the treat, you're not getting the trick. Man, this is a contract, for Christ's sake. It's a verbal contract. You either treat or you get tricked, but people don't trick anymore. So we need these things. We need haunts. We need pro haunts to keep Halloween alive. We need home haunts to keep Halloween alive. Like, we need home haunts to keep Halloween alive in the neighborhoods, in the towns. Pro haunts are great. They're an attraction, though. You have to go to them and seek them out and go to them. It's a little bit different. You know, we need people, more home haunters. So, like, anything we can do to keep this going and to spread the sickness and the disease that we have, and to keep infecting people with it and bring them out. And hey, having all this Home Depot stuff and like Lowe's and Spirit Halloween's putting out all this stuff doesn't hurt either, because now we're just seeing a lot of these 30-foot skellies. Like, it's not my thing. Like, I'm glad people are buying these things and putting them out. It doesn't fit my theme. It's okay. And I love it because it's making it accessible for people to go out and buy some decent stuff, and pretty cool props, and start doing their own little home haunt without having to really build a whole bunch of stuff. You know, I'm not a haunt snob. You know, you do anything. I don't even care if it's an inflatable. I used to look down on inflatables. I'm like, I don't even care what you do. You know, you throw out a couple of inflatables in your yard, you're all right by me. You're doing something. You're doing better than maybe the guy next to you who's doing nothing, you know, not even putting a pumpkin out or turning his light on, or giving out candy. So, yeah, I mean, like I say, we need to keep doing this stuff. We need to keep Halloween alive. And hopefully, you know, as we keep doing you do your show, I do my show, other people are doing their content, you know, people will get more people into this so we can keep this thing going, because it is kind of dying off in some places, and it's just a sad thing. You know, kids aren't going to have that experience that we have. We got to be able to keep that going so they can have have a good experience on Halloween.
Yeah, because last year we had a little rush.
We did have a little rush,
but not like the year before.
No.
And the year before that was even better. And we see the decline. Because when I was a kid, there was thousands of kids in that street. And you weren't allowed to go out till the sun went down. Like, those were the rules. Like, this 3 o'clock, you know, trick-or-treat till 5, you guys got to chill.
Yeah,
like,
they started at 3, and it was supposed to go till 8. And they were done by 6.
Yeah, as soon as the sun went down, everyone stopped coming.
Yeah, that's like trunk or treating, or, you know, look, no, the trick or treating starts when it's dusk. When the sun goes down, that's when nobody's allowed to come get candy at my house. Like, I'm not doing a walkthrough anymore, but I do have a little walk-in area with some surprises. And you can't come into my yard. Gates do not open at the Village Mire until it is dark, until dusk. If you come by earlier, unless it's a real little one, I'm like, okay, here's some candy, you know. But other than that, nope. Come back in 20 minutes. I'm usually telling people, nope, it's too early. It's 5 o'clock. You're gonna be back at 5:30, you know, because it doesn't get dark usually until 5:30. Come back and see me at 5:30, and the show begins.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there's some towns around us that do it the Saturday, either before or after,
again,
from
lame.
2 to 4.
I know.
Lame, not having it. Luckily, we don't have that problem, you know. And unfortunately, I've got too many. Like, I laugh at people. I was talking to somebody just recently, and they were like, they have a home haunt, and they've been doing it for like 4 years, and they're like, yeah, we got like 1,000, 1,500 people. We want to. They want more and more people, and I'm like, you do not understand what you're getting yourself into. You're going to get yourself shut down, or building code inspector's going to show up, or there's going to be problems. Be happy with the fact. I mean, I would be happy with 500 kids.
Yep.
I probably had 1,500. It was way too busy last year. I'm like, nope, I got to dial it back. I did a little walkthrough last year, because that was the last chance I had to do it with my son. He had never helped me out. He had the ability to help me out. I built a tiny little couple of room walkthrough thing. And because everybody's like, hey, there's a haunted house here, and they start, you know, texting and, you know, Snapchatting or whatever the kids do nowadays, their friends, and then people start showing up. The year before that, we were at about 1,000. That was fine. That was perfect. It was still more than I needed, but anything over 500, but I don't want more than 1,000. But so I can't, no more walkthrough, not even a mini walkthrough. You know, this next year is going to be with me with a couple of push buttons to fire off on kids when they come up the driveway. But it's just going to be me giving out candy because I got to dial it. I got to take it down a notch. The yard's going up a notch, but my, like, you know, as far as on Halloween night, I got to take that little driveway portion that I do down a notch. Can't have people showing, because we get people who are coming in from all of the towns. You know, it's like, you know, 1,500 is too much for my neighborhood. You know, it is. Neighbors do not want it. You know, they've been dealing with me for like 15 or 16 years doing this. I'm like, I'm within my rights to do it as long as I don't do a walkthrough. I don't have problems, you know. Yeah. You know, so you gotta walk that fine line. You gotta know when you gotta stop pushing to get more people, or you're gonna end up with, you know, more people, more problems. You know, so
no
you
doubt.
want to have a good time, but you gotta know when enough is enough. Now, with a pro haunt, that's the opposite.
Oh yeah, you want 4,000 people an hour
it's never enough. That's the mindset between a home haunter and a pro haunter. You know, I don't have to advertise to get people to show up.
One's going to get in trouble for too many. The other's going to get in trouble for too little. It's funny.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Then they won't be able to survive if they don't have enough people showing up, and you know, they can't pay their employees and stuff. You know.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm out of questions. You got any questions, Your Honor?
I do not.
Chris, tell the people where they can find you on your social medias, where they can find HauntCast and all that. Pimp it.
Yeah. So Facebook, it's Chris Baker. You can join the HauntCast Facebook group, but you have to answer the 3 questions. If you don't answer the 3 questions, I'm not admitting you. It's HauntCast .podcast group, I believe, on Facebook. It's HauntCast.podcast on Instagram. YouTube is just at HauntCast on YouTube. And the podcast is available on all podcast platforms, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, you name it. It's on every single podcast platform. We have a new website that's up, which is hauntcastpodcast.net. My old site used to be hauntcast.net. It's owned by some like fecal fetish group in Australia now. So don't go to hauntcast.net. Go to hauntcastpodcast.net for the HauntCast. All the updates are there. You can go to the blog page there. I post updates on what's going on with the show. If you want to see the Village Meyer Yard Haunt videos, go at HauntCast on YouTube. All my there's some tutorials. There's a bunch of tutorials there from over the years. I'll probably be posting some new ones up there as I get some more time. Got some prop builds. Cthulhu build will be coming. The Cthulhu build is coming in the future. That will be on YouTube. So yeah, those are all the places that you can catch it. So pretty much the audio podcast is really the thing I'm pushing. Follow us, you know, give us a like, give us a 5-star review if we deserve it, and hauntfully we do. Other than that,
I can vouch, they definitely deserve it. So Apple, Spotify, hit that 5-star review.
Yeah, if you're it's haunt Halloween and haunting fun. If you any haunt horror or Halloween related topics, we got a Maxine review coming up. I'm not sure when this is dropping, so I don't, whatever, you know, like, but we got a Maxine review coming out for the horror, but we've got all kinds of great guests and content on the way, all new stuff, and there's over 520 plus old podcast segments that are up that are just as relevant as they are today as they were when we put them out anywhere between 5, 10, or 15 years ago. You know, it's amazing how the content, you listen to it now, it's just as relevant today. It doesn't, you know, there's no difference. You know, it doesn't matter that it's 2024. When you listen to those segments, you're like, you could imagine that we just recorded it yesterday, you know, so. But anyway, yeah, so check out the show. We'd appreciate it. Give us a listen.
I'll put all the links in the description. I got to remember to do the podcast one because that's the one he's coveting. So we'll push that.
Yeah.
And I just want to
listen. Yeah.
Go for it.
Oh, you can listen to it on YouTube as well because it it gets streamed right to YouTube, so you can listen there as well if you just want to stay on that platform.
Yeah. But everyone's in their car. Use the podcast platforms, people.
There you go. Spotify or whatever, your Apple Podcasts, Amazon.
Yep, that's
whatever.
what we do.
Cool.
But thank you so much for coming on. This has been a real treat. We don't get to home haunts very often, but hearing all this makes me want to change that.
Damn right you are. You're gonna start changing. You better do something you better start doing something out there in the yard.
Listen, we did a yard display a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Little thing. And but since the website, YouTube,
We don't have time.
We didn't have time. It's just, Fridays.
Excuses.
And I travel around the country for work. So I'm on a plane Monday, I land Friday, we head to a haunt. That's really my haunt season. It's crazy.
All right.
Thank you so much for
I'll
coming.
give you a pass then.
So I get a pass. You're home. You don't travel. He can yell at you.
Uh-huh.
But thank you so much for coming on. It's been a huge pleasure. This was a lot of fun. And you got anything else?
Nope.
Guys, subscribe. Live show, August 18th. Howler's Hatchet House. More fun coming to that I heard of earlier.
Yes.
But make sure you subscribe. Make sure you go follow all the links down here for HauntCast. Definitely the OG podcast. And we will see you guys next Monday. Goodbye.
Thanks for
Bye.
having me.